Morning is a really important time for me. I sometimes even say that it's sacred. My mind is in a really unique state for the day, and it's primed for creativity and focus. So my morning routine is all about a simple set of things that I do in order to capture this mindset and make the most out of it. If you're new here, hey, I'm Alex. I'm a data engineer, and here on Zen Codes, my goal is to help you become a more well-rounded developer. I'm teaching full-stack data science and sharing my Zen lifestyle ideas. I've just created a Zen guide for developers, and if you sign up for my free weekly email newsletter, then I'll send you a copy. You can also get a copy by supporting me on Patreon. Now, I mentioned how in the morning my mind is primed for creativity and focus, and I think this is generally true with people after you've had a good night rest. But I'm not trying to tell you that I just jump out of bed and I'm ready to go. Some days I feel like this, but most days I just feel pretty groggy. Some days I even feel depressed. I mean, such is the human condition, you know? So I have a morning routine in order to always take my mind from where it is when I wake up to the right place where it needs to be in order to be productive and do my work and do the things that I want to accomplish in this world. So let's get right to it. The first thing I do is to capture any creative thoughts or ideas that I have. And I continue doing this throughout my entire morning. So I find in the morning, ideas just sort of come to me. Like maybe my subconscious has been working on these things overnight and it's kind of figured these out and it's just like put it in a little place where it's ready to like surface into my conscious mind. Or maybe it's that my mind is just so empty from not having all these little tiny things and problems and thoughts. Like I've been basically in this kind of meditative state all night. So I haven't had a lot of these things in my consciousness. And so maybe it's just out of this emptiness that these ideas can just kind of bubble up. So I simply just want to write any of this stuff down as they come up throughout the entire morning. The next part of my morning routine is actually something I don't do, and that's to consume content. Or at least if I am consuming content, it's very deliberate. For example, if I woke up and read a book that I'm currently reading and I decided to read one chapter of that book, that would be like a deliberate consumption of content. I'll have another example later with music that I listen to. An example of what I wouldn't want to do is to watch the news or go on TikTok or watch the sports highlights. This would kind of be like me waking up and just going into like the snack drawer and starting to eat a bunch of popcorn. Never gonna happen first thing in the morning. So why would I do that to my brain? Like, makes no sense to me. So I'm very careful about content consumption in the morning. One thing that I do have to do as a data engineer is to make sure that my jobs have run correctly. If there's an error or something went wrong with the data, I want to get ahead of that before the day starts and I start getting emails from users who aren't seeing the data properly. So I want to just sort of tackle that immediately. And this is the one part for me with my career that will really mess up my morning routine if something goes wrong here, and there's nothing I can do about that. But what I have done is to make a really clear way of checking this without getting too consumed into my work. So what I do is I go on my phone and I just have a little button that I click that pulls up my data pipelines, and I can just look through any failed data pipelines. This allows me to check the status of my jobs without having to check my email, which, as you know, it could rope you into like a whole world of pain that I would prefer to delay until I'm ready to deal with that. Right, so I confirm that there are no data emergencies so that I can move on with my morning. And what I like to do is this mindfulness practice of labeling my actions. It's going to sound a little bit weird, but it's pretty cool, and it really helps center me in what I'm doing right now and avoid my mind racing off to thoughts from the past or thoughts of the day ahead, because I just want to center myself on what reality is and as I wake up. So as I go about my morning routine, I mentally label each action that I take. So if I'm walking down the hall, I might think to myself, walking down the hall. When I grab my shoes, I would think, putting on my shoes, tying up my shoelaces, grabbing my keys from the tray, opening the door. And it's like by having these kind of mental labels on each action I take, yeah, it just really grounds me. Pretty cool. You should give it a shot. And I also like to do it sometimes when I'm cooking, but specifically doing it in the morning is really great to keep my mind from drifting because it wants to think about the future, and I don't want to think about that just yet. In fact, the next thing I want to think about is experiencing gratitude. So I'll explain to you how I go about that. The next part of my morning routine is to get outside. And as Andrew Huberman says, I want to make a beeline for sunlight. I want to get some sunlight in my eyes. The moment I step outside is usually the first one when I actually feel like I'm starting to wake up. I get that fresh air. I live in Toronto, so I'm not going to say the air is really fresh, but it's air that's not in my condo, and it's maybe crisp this fall with the coolness coming in, and there's a lot of light coming at me. So even if the sun is just like starting to rise, it's still a lot more bright than it is in my condo, even with lights on in here. It's amazing how much light you get when you just step outside compared to being inside. So as you can tell, this is a really key part of my morning routine, is getting outside. And what I'll do is I'll put headphones in and I'll listen to some song that's meaningful to me. I usually choose this song intentionally, and these days I've been listening to the same song every single morning. And during this time, I try to focus on gratitude. So I try to think about some good things that I've experienced, good people I've met, or maybe I'll think about my dog, and I'll just feel grateful for these experiences that I've had. So this is like more of a reflective gratitude practice, but you could also make this gratitude practice about the present. So thinking about your health or your family and friends and all of the people who are supporting you and the incredible things that you get to do with your life right now today. And that leads us into the next part, which is thinking about the big picture. By the way, guys, if there's any of these ideas I've shared that you want me to dig more into, I'd love to make a full video about that. So please let me know what you're curious about from this video, because I think I'm touching on a lot of different topics throughout the course of this morning routine. Commenting on my video in this way is much like giving me a like or subscribing to my channel. It's an action that you can take to support the work I do and show that the ideas I'm sharing are useful and they're helping you. So at this point in my routine, I like to get to a spot in the park where I have access to direct sunlight, where it's like super bright, and I want to expose that light to my eyes. Now, I gotta be careful, like I'm not telling you to look directly into the sunlight. You could maybe keep it off, like to the corner of your vision kind of thing. You can look into more information about this and like decide what you're comfortable doing. But like I certainly don't stare directly at the sun, but I will look directly, I will face it, and it'll just be off like in the periphery kind of my vision, and that gets a lot of light into my eyes, which I really love. And I'll do some kind of stretching routine. So stretching is really healthy for the body. It kind of gets your like fluids moving through your muscles and kind of wakes everything up. So I can't say enough good stuff about stretching, and like a yoga practice is great, but I'll kind of do like a quick version of this in the morning. And I like to do this kind of spine twist move. I read about this in a book called The Tao of Health, Sex, and Longevity, which is a book on ancient Chinese medicine and lifestyle, which I found very interesting, although not entirely scientifically grounded in every aspect. Still probably worth checking out, maybe less relevant for females. So there's actually two moves I do here. The first is this spine and torso twist maneuver. And the next one is called the pendulum. And after I've done these things, I just kind of swing my arms around in circles to the side like a crazy person, maybe stretch out my chest on a tree or something. So I definitely don't mind looking like a weirdo in the park in the morning. You gotta be okay with that. So as I'm doing this, I'm thinking about the big picture. And the point of this part of my day is to kind of like recoup my identity. I find in the morning, my identity is like this sort of like fuzzy thing, or it's maybe like been scattered around a little bit. And I don't know if you guys feel this way, but for me, it's like I need to constantly remind myself that what I'm doing is the right thing to do, and like regroup myself a little bit. So what am I all about? Like, where where am I going in my career? What am I working on my side projects? What am I working on in my job? Like what are the big things that I'm trying to push forward? Like, I find I'm really happy once I have a good grip on these big things that I'm doing in life, when I have these big goals, and also in my personal life. Like, what am I trying to achieve there? And so I hold these goals in my mind as like, this is where I'm working towards. And for me, that makes me happy. Like, to know these things, that's kind of my identity, is like working towards these big goals. That's how I work as a person. So for me, it's really important to re-grab those and like re-grasp those ideas. Then I start focusing down on like, okay, so good. These are your big things. How are you actually like making some progress towards these things? What are the current projects I'm working on in all three of those categories? My side project, my job, and my personal life. And then I think of some like tasks, like what are the actual things I'm doing today, as in like kind of picturing my calendar, like what are the things I'm doing today and when am I doing them? And this helps focus me on the present and what I have to do next. And to really motivate me to like really want to do these things, what I can do, and sometimes I do this, is I'll visualize how I'm feeling if those things are done. So especially if it's a task that I'm like not looking forward to, not really that excited about it, well, how am I going to feel when I'm done that thing? I'll probably feel really great, right? So I want to get that feeling, and that'll help motivate me to like go do the hard thing. So the next part of my morning routine is returning back home, and I'd like to do this in a special way as well. So like at this point, I've thought about my goals and I've focused in on my tasks, and there's no point in keep continuing to spin that through my head. So what I like to do on my return home is to give myself the gift of being present and fully mindful in my current situation, and not thinking about my job or my project or whatever else is on my mind. It's a focus practice, and I have to do this intentionally. Like, this is not easy. It doesn't come naturally to me, but I do get this feeling now, like when I start to head home, and this could be in the morning, but it can also be from walks, or sort of like whenever I get close to the home, I get this feeling of like, oh, this is nice. I can just be present. I don't have to worry about all this stuff. It's like a Pavlovian response now for me, I guess. It's pretty cool. So some practical strategies for achieving this are, you could think about the feeling of the ground on your feet. I like to wear these barefoot shoes. They're shoes, but they're called barefoot shoes, and that helps me really feel the ground. I love these things, but that's like a whole other video. But you could also just look around you, and you could do that labeling activity, like walking through the streets, looking at the beautiful tree. I also kind of like to feel trees. Like as I pass them, I'll just rub my hand against them, and you kind of feel the world, and it helps just put you in here. And it gives you the opportunity to like notice all of the small treasures and beautiful things just of day-to-day life that just surround you. And me living in the city is not the same beauty as maybe you living in the suburbs or the country or something, but it's still beautiful in a way, and I like to notice these things, and this is a good opportunity for me to do that. Some of my favorite things to notice are birds flying around, and I do like to keep my head up and sort of like keep a good posture and try and look up. And so I love looking at birds as they kind of fly around, and I find them incredible creatures. So perfect when I can see like a flock of birds kind of flying in the morning. It's a beautiful thing. Right, so in this way, I arrive back home, and now for me, I just kind of let my mind wander, or just like think about whatever it wants, do whatever it wants at this point, and I gotta focus on like getting a few things done before I can start working. The first thing I'll do is fill up the kettle, and I wanna get some water going to boil to make coffee. And then what I'll do is drink some lemon water. So I like to drink a lot of water and put a bit of lemon in it. I wanna dilute the lemon a lot so it's not too like acidic on my teeth or my throat, and then I put some salt in there as well. And I'll just kind of drink that. I really enjoy doing that in the morning. There's benefits of drinking lemon for me, but it might not work as well for you, so you could think about doing that or not. And then I'll make my coffee. And coffee for me is the thing I look forward to most every morning. Nothing like a drug to really make you feel alive, you know what I'm saying? But coffee is my only drug. I don't drink alcohol. I don't do other drugs. So this is obviously really special time for me when I get to have a coffee in the morning, and I very much look forward to that. So I like to make a V60 pour-over coffee for myself. I actually have one right here that I'm drinking right now, and that's how I do it. But before I drink my coffee, I like to have a cold shower. This is one of those polarizing things. A lot of people, most people I tell that to say, "You're crazy, what are you doing?" Some people I tell that to say, "Yeah, I do that every morning as well." And it's really addictive. There's scientific evidence that you get an increase in the amount of dopamine that your body releases following a cold shower. And this can last for a long time, like hours after the cold exposure. So that's probably why I'm addicted to it. But also, like, as soon as I step in that water, my mind is 100%, like it's like 20x what it was thinking before. And it's like, imagine you're picturing the end thing or like the next thing you're working towards. And then when I get in that cold shower, my mind just starts like boom, 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 like connecting the dots of like how to get there, right? It's like, okay, sit down and do this and then get that and open this and do, and it's like, I don't know. It's just like, it forces me to just be like so very awake and aware. So that's a pretty cool feeling. How I've been doing it these days is just putting my shower to be cold or pretty much as cold as it can get and just jumping in for like a minute, probably about a minute. And it makes a big difference because when you stay in 2 minutes or 3 minutes, there's a lot of pain in that time. So time does not pass quickly in that environment. What you could do as well is ease into it. So you could start with like a normal shower and then just like slowly turn it down colder and colder and colder. And at some point you will get uncomfortable. I mean, the point is to feel uncomfortable. This also might be a little bit safer though, because one risk of doing this is to get a heart attack. So be careful with yourself and do what's safe and what feels good for you. And truly, this does feel incredible for me. Not during, like I mentioned, but as soon as I get out, it's like ecstasy. It's such a good feeling. And I know I have my coffee to look forward to, and I am just like so ready to do my work. And that is how I end my morning routine. I get some clothes on, I grab my coffee, I sit down at my desk, and I do my work. If you've got this far in the video, I'd appreciate it if you give me a like and consider subscribing. These small actions that you can do make a big impact on me here on YouTube. So how should you use this information? I suggest what you do is take 1 or 2 or 3, like some of these ideas I've talked about, and if they're interesting to you, you can try and integrate them into your current routine. And with your routine, the most important things I think you should think about are making sure that it supports your mission, making sure that it's simple, and then aiming to do it consistently, and having the plan the night before. So the idea with the routine is you don't have to spend every night making a new plan. It's the same thing you do every single day, and eventually it's just going to happen automatically, and it won't even take thought consciously. And like I said, my idea is to bring my mind from this uncertain, how am I going to feel in the morning type state to this place where I'm super productive and I'm ready to make the most out of this focus that I have available to me in the morning. The last thought that I want to leave you with is that this thing I'm doing, this routine, this is not some like ultimate realization or vision or like, 20 years of tweaking my routine has led me to this. It's just like what I'm doing this fall, and I've shared why I'm doing it and how it's helping me, and I am trying to stay consistent with it in this period of my life. But I know that going into the future, this is going to change, and I'm going to add elements or remove elements. And depending on where I live, it might change drastically or what other factors are happening in my life. This is just like what's working for me right now. And I can say that it's working really well. I'd love for you to leave me a comment discussing any of these ideas that I've shared and how you feel about them, and sharing what you do for your morning routine. Thank you very much for watching. Namaste.